So welcome back, everyone. Glad to get you back from the coffee. Those who were sleepy, I hope you woke up now. The next speaker is Bart from Belgium. He said that's all he wants to say. But I found out a few other things about him as well. So not the typical case where a tester starts out and becomes a developer. It's exactly the opposite. And I think he will have a very interesting story to tell. So welcome on stage, Bart.
Hi.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
What is a Porygon?
Yeah, I'm going to explain, but I don't want to scare any people here in the room.
Okay, it's scary.
It's a Pokemon, but if you're not into Pokemon, it's really like just the first 4 minutes of my talk. So please stay after the first minute.
So I'm sure everybody wants to hear about Pokemons. This might be more interesting than testing in some cases, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, Bart, let's go.
Thanks. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first track talk of this conference. This track talk is Capturing Network Like a Porygon. Who am I? I am Bart van Raemdonck. If you don't know how to pronounce that, my name, it's okay. Just say Barry or Bart, it's so fine. I'm a league coach QA for Access. If you want to know more about what a league coach is, come see me afterwards. But I'm also a QA engineer at TPG Media. It's my current project. I'm 34 years old. I'm engaged and father of a beautiful daughter called Lenka. I'm into sports. I'm into music, both active and passive. But also like gaming. And if you say gaming, I really like the game Pokemon Go. And in Pokemon, you catch Pokemon. And this talk is about catching network requests. So you see what I did there. But also, why Porygon? Because Porygon, let's wait before I catch it. That's the cool thing, right? Yeah, I caught it. Porygon is actually a Pokemon created by humans. And it exists of programming code. So in every talk I do, I like to tell something personal. So this is a personal thing. I like to play Pokemon Go, and Porygon is in my talk. Last talk I did, I sang a song of Ed Sheeran. I don't know which you liked best, but all right, let's go to the main topic. So, catching network requests. Why would we catch network requests? Anyone has an answer?
Because we need it.
Because we need it, of course. I know there are a lot of tools out there, and you can check API calls, network requests on its own. But I think it's important to also catch them in your application. If it's a web application, if it's a mobile application, if it's a TV app, anything you want. Because I kind of see it as an end-to-end test of your network request inside your application. You can see how it behaves when it fails. If you do an API test, for example, and it gives back a 400 or 403, okay, you know that's good or not good. But you want to check that behavior also inside your application. Also for debugging reasons, right? If something goes wrong, you can check if it's related to any network problems. How to catch them? There are several ways. Proxy service. There are a lot of tools out there. They're all great. In this talk, I'm going to show you Charles Proxy, but they do not sponsor me or anything. You have Fiddler, you have Burp Suite. There are a lot of great tools out there. If you just Google proxy server tools, you find a whole list of them. So it's not a vendor talk. But Charles Proxy I use on a daily basis, so that's what I want to show you today. So I'll give a little demo about that. Of course, you can also check network calls inside your browser. A lot of browser developer tools have that network tab where you can check all kinds of things. Login libraries, you can also code your logging for network requests. And I'm going to show you a little example of that combined with Appium later on in this talk. And of course, you have the usual API tools like, again, not a vendor talk, but you have Postman, you have SOAP UI, tools like that. So, let's get into Charles Proxy. This is Charles Proxy, very sexy, isn't it? You can use a free version, and you can use it up to 30 minutes, but if you buy a license, of course, you can use it as much as you want. As you can see, you have some cool services linked to it to track activity and stuff like that. So we have the different options here. Like I said before, you can easily open up any activity trackers on your Mac, or of course, if you use Windows, it's also for Windows. You can start a new session, record a new session, so once you press that red button, you can start to record a session. Of course, you can close a session, import, export, save it. It's really a cool thing if you want to share your results with your teammates or someone externally. Of course, you have the sample edit buttons. You can change some things to the views if you want, but the really cool things are with the proxy menu and the tools menu. So with the proxy menu, you can enable SSL proxying because most calls are secured, right? So you need it SSL proxying. You can throttle the network. So if you want to check your network calls under a delay or on a 2G network, for example, that's all possible. You can set breakpoints. You can do a lot of other stuff. You can create your own computer into a proxy. So you will see every network call that comes through on your computer. So those are the tools that I use the most. And then the toolbox setting, the most important ones I use is the rewrite function and the map local or the map remote. So we can modify those requests. You can say, all right, I will see a call and I can rewrite some values and keywords from that call, from the body, from the header, everything you want. And you can do the same actually with map local. You can link a response it will be overwritten by a local file. I will show you also in a minute. Then here with the help menu, what's very important here is you need to install the root certificate, because otherwise you won't see any SSL proxy calls. So you need to install, if you're just going to use your own laptop, you just need to install the root certificate. If you're going to use mobile devices, you also need to install a certificate on the device. But I will also show you later. You can buy a license, like I said, but it's free for 30 minutes. So 30 minutes, yeah. So if you don't use it on a daily basis, it's a pretty cool tool. But after 30 minutes, it shuts down. And then you have to start it up, and again, 30 minutes. So that can be annoying if you use it a lot. Again, install the certificate, because otherwise it won't work. Let's try with a simple example. So for this example, I will use my Mac as my proxy, so that's why I will enable it here. And also, I'm going to a newest website from Belgium. It's called 14 News, but it's a cool thing to show because it has a weather widget, and a traffic widget. So behind that widget, there are API calls, and you see in Charles Proxy here. These are the calls, so I can see the body, the requests, the headers, everything of information of that call. Now the cool thing is, they only show you the amount of traffic jam, not the other values and parameters. So I want to rewrite that traffic jam length to another value and see what happens in the widget. So for this case, I'm copying the response, and I'm saying here, okay, I want to override that body response with another value. So the value I'm using here, instead of the normal traffic jam value, I think it's 55,000 kilometers of traffic jam. Not going to happen, I think, at least not in Belgium. But let's see what the result is in the weather widget. Traffic widget. Did it stop playing? I think so. Okay, surprise, if you refresh it, the widget will show you indeed 55,000 kilometers of traffic jam. But the other value, like the max traffic jam length ever, is not being overwritten in that case. So that's already maybe a bad use case. I think the whole presentation froze now. You can change that value to, in this example, into a big number. And then just reapply the rewrite rule. And then if you go to the website and reload that, then we will see in the traffic widget that number. We can do the same with the weather service, because this is where part of testing comes in mind. What happens, for example, if a key value is missing? What does that do to that widget? So in this example, I'm going to the API of the weather service. So this is a quick view of the traffic again. So we use that one with a rewrite rule. And now we're going to use this weather response to check if one parameter, if we remove one parameter, what the result is in the widget eventually. So here I'm going to use map local. So I saved that file, that response, just in a text file as a JSON file. And I'm going to remove the temperature of my region. So here I'll save it as a map local example.json. I already had one, so I replaced it. And then I will go looking, because here it was saying 20 degrees, so I'm going to look up in the file where it was saying 20 degrees, and it's center, because, all right, I live near Antwerp, but it's fine. And everything is close in Belgium. So if I remove that field in that map in the JSON file that I linked to the map local, and I save that. Okay. Then we're going to find out what it does in the widget. So I'm copying the request here, and here I will enable the map local settings, and I will here add a new map local rule. So that request will be linked now to that local JSON file. So when I load that network call, it will immediately override the response with my local JSON file. So there you go. So once we go back to the website and we refresh, we will see what it will do to the weather widget. 0 degrees. Okay, UX-wise, I don't know if that's the best possible solution. If something is wrong with your JSON or a key parameter is missing, if to show 0 degrees as a weather in the weather service, but it shows you how you can play around with those keys and values inside your network request, inside your responses. My team is responsible for advertisements. We're responsible for advertisements on websites, on apps. So that gives a little bit of context. We built a demo site for our own to check those network requests because we integrate with all the brands of our company. So I want to show you a simple example of that demo site and what I do on a daily basis. I automated this, so I don't have to do it manually, of course. I'm grateful that I don't have to do it manually every day. But just to show you, like, this is the demo site, there are ads on the demo site, and I need to check certain parameters in that network call for those advertisements. So we can do it, like I said before, we can do it also in the browser developer console. You have the network tab there. So let's find that call. We call it the V3 call because, as you can see, it's called V3. And inside that call, there are a lot of parameters here, and we need to check them. They can change those parameters because if you do give consent, if you don't give consent, for example, that's already a variation in values. But as you can see here, I just want to give an example. Those are the values I check on. What kind of ad is loaded? Do we send other parameters? Because if you do give consent, you're also allowing marked segments to check you. So those are all the kind of parameters. And I will come back also for the mobile part. So I want to just give you a quick overview of those parameters. So let's do the same with Charles now. Pretty much the same. Again, we're going to start a proxy, use our own computer as a proxy, and we're going to the demo site, we're going to refresh, and we'll see the same network call appearing in Charles. Also, another cool thing is you see the tab Other Calls. You can easily click and say, focus on this call, because if you're inspecting or debugging a lot of the same calls, you don't have to look them up and every time in a bunch of network calls. You can just focus on them and they will appear right at the top. So here we see the v3 calls coming in. And you see at the top, you see exactly the same parameters I showed you in the browser console. So that was it for web. But the real cool thing is, with Charles, you can also use it for mobile applications or TV applications these days. So we will use a computer as a proxy server and then see what goes through the network from that app or that mobile device. Important here is, again, please install the certificate, otherwise you won't see any calls. Or you will see calls, but you cannot view them probably. So I have here a connected Android device. And also I will first set up the connection, of course. So we'll check the IP address. If there are hackers in the room, this is not the IP address right now, this is a movie. So you just go to your network connection and you will change the IP and the port of your configuration. So once that is done, and you will start recording a session, every network traffic that's passing by your mobile app or your mobile phone will be recorded. We have the same demo app as we use, or we have a demo website for a website, of course, but we also have a demo app where we can test our different ad behaviors in. And for this example, I just will render one ad, simple ad, and we'll see also that v3 call appearing. So you see calls coming in right now. There it is. Yeah, that's a failing v3 call. That's not our fault. That's from the ad server. We mentioned it. I hope they solve it in the future. So now we're really going to render an ad. So this is our demo app. And once the ad is in view, you will see another v3 call. There it is, where we can check also those parameters. So you'll see the parameters are basically the same as with web. Of course, it's saying you're on an Android phone, you're on an iOS phone, stuff like that. And it's also part of the configuration which variables are there. Just to give you an idea that it can also be used for mobile devices. This is an example of Android, but of course, you can do it the same with iOS. And so this is a quick example. Again, you have to configure the proxy right. You need to install the certificate before it will work. Now the difference here with the iOS one is if you don't allow tracking, some value, it's called the IFA key, will be 0. And it will not send some parameters because you don't allow it. You don't have consent for that. So that's the difference between Android. You don't have that tracking logic there. So IFA will be 1 if you give the normal consent. That's important because at the end of this talk, I'm going to automate this. And there in the test, it's checking if the IFA value is 0 or 1. So here again, we will see the v3 call. It's also another. This is what happens actually when SSL is not working properly. So if you're not having installed a certificate, you will see like a call like that. Why it happened now, I don't know. Charles is not flawless. It has bugs, I report them, but I think it's still a great tool if you're using network debugging on a daily basis. So here the same. This is the same demo app but on iOS. So we're going to render a net call. We're going to scroll down until it renders. And then we will see another v3 call with the values in it. If I'm going to click on that v3 call, yes, you will see it's tracked as an iOS device. And also that IFA value here will be 0 because we don't allow tracking yet. Okay. So another thing I want to show you is, I don't know if some of you have a lot of problems with environments. So we used to have dev, test, acceptance, production. But my experience is, after a while, after a few years, non-prod is the only one that's being used for testing purposes. Business uses it, the developers use it, and it's polluted. So you don't know anymore if it's a bug, it's a configuration, if it's a content error. So I had a problem, and that's why we came up with our team with a QA feed. So it uses the map local to override, I will start the video so it will make things clear. It will override the content of, in this case, a news app, and it will replace the content with our QA feed. And in that feed, there are all different kind of ads we support. So we can see in one overview in a minute, all different kind of ads, all different kinds of sizes, how they react. Failing ads are also in that queue, so we know how they react in that app. So we don't need to connect anymore to an acceptance environment that is polluted, and then don't know if there is a bug, what's the reason. But you can, in this example, you can just use map local, and it will override the content. So I already made that rule to speed things up. So this is actually the network call that will load the content of the app, so the articles and stuff. I'm also adding a rewrite rule to saying this is a test, because in the past we didn't have that, and the ad server thought we were a bot. So by adding this, it knows, okay, this is from testing. And otherwise, you won't get any results back if if the ad server thinks you're a bot. So you see that QA feed. So you have different ads there. What happens if an ad fails? It should show a little response of, yeah, there is no ad. You also see different sizes of ads. If it does lazy loading, stuff like that, all of those examples we can check off with that QA feed. So that's a cool example of how to use a map local rule. You can also use command line, and that makes things very interesting, because if you have UI tests running in your pipeline and you want to test, for example, that QA feed, you can just save that configuration from that session and load it inside your pipeline, and then use command line commands to start or stop recording, to start throttling, stuff like that. Everything you can do manually, you can do with command line. And this is how you do it. You will just have to write out a command like this with your IP address with the port, and then the command of Charles. I made a really quick video to show you. One thing you really need to do is put on that setting. You can also use authentication for that, but I didn't use it in this example. That makes it a little bit secure if you're not trust your colleagues or anyone else in your company to use it. But here, the setting is on, and if I just load a simple terminal, I will demonstrate how to start and stop a session. But again, you can use any command here. So you are started, and now I'm going to stop it. All right, let's talk about mobile app automation. And for this, I don't use Charles proxy, but I use Emmet proxy. And Emmet proxy is a free and open source library. It's originally written in Python, but you can just include it in your Java classes or any framework actually. And what it does, well, in my code, I will start Appium. I will start a proxy server, that's Emmet proxy, and I will set capabilities. I assume you all played around with Appium or heard of it, so I'm not going into depth of Appium, but I'm going quickly over a scenario, and things will be clear. But the main thing here is that proxy, it will just catch every network request and store them in an array list. And then you can just go over that list and check if which parameters are there or values are missing. So this is a test. This is actually just the same thing I did before manually. It will open the demo app. It will go through the menus just to render one specific ad, and we're going to check those key values and keywords and values of that network call. So how does it look on Android? I did this with Appium 1 and Appium 2 because I know a lot of legacy projects still use Appium 1, so it's possible in both versions. So here again, I checked okay, here I changed the port because it needs to connect now to the port of Emmet proxy, and Emmet proxy default is 8080, Charles proxy is 8888. So you're on the test, and I know it's going to work because it's a video. So it will start up the app, go through the menus. So that's all Appium, but it started off with a proxy. So everything of network requests is being now recorded by the emit proxy. So we'll scroll down to the add. And once that add is there, there's a check. And you see here all the possible keywords I can check upon. You can check on any keyword, but I just printed out of the list to show you, yeah, it had recorded all the keywords I'm going to check. And in the test, I check if IFA is there and if the right IFA value is there. So those are all the network requests. I also printed them out in this example. So we can do the same with iOS. And the only difference here in this test, I also added an example of installing the certificate, because if you're using emulators in the cloud or stuff like that, or third parties, you don't own the device, so you can't install upfront a certificate. So you can also use the code to install the certificate for you. And basically it's the same test, so we're going through all the menus, we're going to render the add, and then we're going to check if IFA is there, and if the IFA available is 0. I explained why that is 0, and with Android that was 1. It's due to the consent settings, the tracking settings of iOS. Install a certificate. If you want to use it, somehow this is part of the code to install the certificate. You just have to refer to the certificate of emit proxy and then install it on the device. It's a simple code. You can easily find that on the internet. So how does it look on iOS? Yes, this is a simulator because it's very easy to do test automation with the app file of your app instead of the IPA file. So that's why I used the simulator. But again, if you're working with cloud emulators or third parties, they also can handle this. So here I'm going to change the port of the proxy of the Wi-Fi of the computer, because it's an emulator, so it's connected. It uses the Wi-Fi of my computer. Because you can't install a port or configure a port on emulators. At least I didn't find that feature yet. So it's just going to do the same. It's going to start up the demo app from iOS. It's going through the menus and it will render the add. And here it will check. Again, I will print out a list of all the key parameters it found. But the test here is, of course, if IFA is there and if the value of IFA available is 0 in this case. And voila, our test passed. So I think I went a little bit over time, but due to technical failures, I think that's allowed, right? So that was actually my last demo of this talk. And it's before we go to the question section, I will just we'll ask you some feedback. I know there's feedback in the app of the Nordic Testing Days or the web application, but if you want to provide me extra information what I can improve on, you can also scan that one, and it's just a Microsoft Forms document, and then I can learn from you guys. If you want to add me as a friend on Pokemon Go, there's also a QR code for that. So besides that, are there any questions?
We have question assurance, so here we go.
Hi, thank you for your knowledge sharing. I have a few questions. First of all, what if our application under test has SSL pinning? So it's quite difficult to sniff traffic like that in that case. And the second question is, what if our application has a WebSocket? So how we can proxy it and possibly manipulate it?
What was the first question?
If our application on test has SSL pinning.
As a what? Sorry.
SSL pinnings.
Okay. Yeah, SSL proxying you mean? Or?
No. Yeah, usually application use SSL, but if our application has SSL pinning, because there's a way where you share your certificate and it prevents intercepting traffic and etc.
Okay, I never used it. I never.
Sometimes application like bankings or government application has this to prevent sniffing the traffic.
Okay, I never played around with such applications, but I think if you just use SSL proxying, we should figure out what would we see, and if you need to install an extra certificate.
Yeah. If you install your own certificate, application simply won't work because your server will not allow to sniff the traffic and play around with it.
Okay, I think I have to figure that out at that situation. I don't have a clear answer on that yet. But if you contact me, I can look it up for you, or we can check it together maybe, how to solve that. And your second question?
Second question, some applications are using a WebSocket connection as well, so charities support just viewing it. But if we need to somehow manipulate it, like we do it with HTTP.
Okay, so it's injected Java or?
No, WebSocket connection. It's not about request and response. It's
okay.
Sockets.
I never worked with WebSockets yet, but I think on the site of Charles you will find a proper solution.
Charles has an opportunity to only view the connection, but not manipulate it.
Oh, okay.
So you cannot intercept, you cannot rewrite or response, you cannot map local, etc. with WebSocket.
Okay.
But is there any other tool that can do this?
With Charles you can modify, but you have also Fiddler, Burp Suite, for example. You can also modify those requests.
No, they doesn't allow as well. So they just allow to view.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's another situation I have to figure out, I think. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you guys need to catch up later, right?
All right.
To discuss over
sure.
dinner. Time for one last question. Here we go.
My name is Hannah. Hi, thank you for your presentation. Was very, yes, it's like fast. I'm trying to do some even photos, and I have a question. You presented two variants of API testing, Charles and Appium. Appium was for me okay. I see the Java, as I understand, Java and Selenium. For Charles, do we have some code access or even you presented only a video, you can take a response or request and do something. Do we have some code, Java connected, JavaScript or something in Charles?
I didn't find out yet. I don't think so. That's why I used a combination of Appium and Emmet proxy. There was also browser mob proxy, I believe you can use with Selenium or Appium, but that's outdated and it's not supported anymore, I believe. So that's why I used Emmet proxy in this example.
And the second question, Appium is also not it needs some certificate for 30 minutes and this will be done, or you can use it for free. Yeah,
Appium is open source, you can use it for free. And it just released, I think last year it released Appium 2.0. So before it was 1.23, I believe that was the last version of 24. I don't know off the top of my head. But you can use the setup I used here with Appium 1 and 2. So it's open source Appium for mobile testing.
So Appium is more code based and Charles is more for instead of DevTools in browser.
Yeah, two separate things. Charles is just to catch and modify network requests, and Appium is just a global open source tool to do mobile test automation.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you very much for the questions, and thank you, Bart, for a very nice technical presentation.
Thanks.